Today's cast includes the brilliant young Wagnerian soprano Astrid Varnay, seeing the role of the faithful woman Senta in the place of Weigert, who was originally scheduled for this part. Hans Hotter sings the title role of the Dutchman. Sven Nielsen will be Daland, the father of Senta. Set Svanholm, her betrothed Erik, and the cast is completed by Herta Glass as Mary and Thomas Hayward as the steersman. Fritz Reiner conducts the performance, which has been staged by Herbert Graf.
Madame Varnay recounted to me the difficulty in learning the role of Senta.
The difficulty was the way it was composed. It was repetitious, and it was very difficult to figure out what sounds strange, but let's say most of the pieces that I ever heard in my life had a continuity, and here it was repetitious. And I was studying with Hermann Weigert, and of all things, instead of insisting upon repeating it with him or with my mother, he said he was going somewhere, I don't know if it was business or vacation, and when he came back he expected me to know. I thought it was strange, but at the same time, there must have been a reason. And I found out by reading the score without music, first, that she repeats and repeats and repeats the ballade in her mind. And this repetition has a reason for it, actively. And all of a sudden it became clear to me that a person who dwells on this painting of the Dutchman repeats her emotions again and again. And that's how I learned.
Right. And the choice of dynamics that Wagner wrote.
Well, I always watched the dynamics. Yes. I was taught to do that. But especially here, because it was a routine job almost, with a little change in between, chorus and so forth.
This broadcast of Der Fliegende Holländer is the 5th performance of Miss Varnay's career as Senta. She learned this role 10 years prior and had little reason to look at the score until she was asked to replace Lyuba Velic in the fall of 1950. One must conclude that her vocal maturity allowed her to sing the treacherous ballade with great ease, confidence, and complete mastery of its wide-ranging vocal demands. The next broadcast that Astrid Varnay participated in was Die Walküre, singing Sieglinde on February 3, 1951. This broadcast is especially notable as the BRÜNNHILDE of that afternoon, Kirsten Flagstad, was celebrating the 16th anniversary of her Metropolitan Opera debut. Here is the finale of Der Männersippe saß hier im Saal from Act 1. The conductor is Fritz Stiedry. Listen now to the brief moment when Brünnhilde and Sieglinde sing one right after the other. The similarity of the resonance of the two voices is striking. Of even greater significance was the Covent Garden performance of Die Walküre the following May 31st, with Kirsten Flagstad as Sieglinde and Astrid Varnay as Brünnhilde. This sharing of the stage was the second of two occurrences. It also served as Flagstad's retirement from the Wagnerian operatic scene, and, as a result, an artistic inheritance for Astrid Varnay.
When she decided to sing the role of Sieglinde, I don't recall the date, but it was very close, end of May, Flagstad decided that she wanted to repeat the role that she had first started in England, and she was a great favorite in England, to sing Sieglinde. And by luck and chance, I was doing the Brünnhilde.
She requested you, didn't she?
I think she must have, I have no way of knowing.
Yeah.
But irrespective of that, it was wonderful to be with her and to sing the Ho and everything. And the last act, it's fabulous how sometimes the sounds are the same. Because I was very much enamored of her placement and
her vocal placement.
And there was a freshness and a youth in her voice all the time.
Yes.
To the very end. Maybe the language has something to do with it, her native language. But that day, and I have heard this duet in the Metropolitan, but there was no radio for this happening in England.
In England, yes.
Except that they had her bow after the first act, and after the second act, and there she stretched out her hand. I thought she wanted me to come there for some reason or another, took my hand and left the stage. And it was a very, very moving thing. In fact, I had to pull myself together for the accolade that she gave me, like saying, take over.
Yes.
I still had another act to sing.
Right.
And that was very... Then she didn't appear anymore at the end of it. But as I say, as far as the 50s are concerned, many people ask me about the 50s. The acclaim in England gave me also a feeling I have to go through Europe to other places. Because I was kept at the Metropolitan quite purposely. People were engaged, and I felt that I wanted to spread my wings. It was less against the Met as more of wanting to see the world.
Freedom.
And
Right.
1951, when you come to think of it, singing in Italy, in Florence, and then going to Bayreuth, That's quite something.
Yes. It all started happening
That's right.
in 1950-51. Astrid Varnay's career now started to include Europe and the beginning of an immensely successful and enduring stay at the Bayreuth Festival. Kirsten Flagstad had been asked to sing in Bayreuth in 1950, but she turned it down. She recommended Ms. Varnay.
In 1951 was the great big change when I'd worked with in Florence, where I asked whether they could come and listen to me. And I believe I'm the only one at that time who received a contract without having given an audition.
Right.
Maybe if I had given it, they wouldn't have taken me. I often thought that. You never can tell.
After positive recommendations from Flagstad, George London, and 30 other operatic luminaries, Bayreuth signed her on. On November 2nd, 1951, while on a concert tour, Weigert and Ms. Varnay were stopped on an Albuquerque highway by a ranger and were told that Ms. Varnay needed to fly to San Antonio to replace Helen Traubel. Then, a month later, tragedy struck. Weigert suffered unstable angina in El Paso, Texas. Reluctantly, Ms. Varnay fulfilled a Verdi concert date in Dallas on December 16th, singing arias from Macbeth, Il Trovatore, and Un ballo in maschera. Thus begins a chain of events that influenced her to rethink her relationship with the Metropolitan. Unbeknownst to her, the husband of Helen Traubel notified the Met that his wife had not recovered and has a high temperature. She would not be able to sing the Götterdämmerung BRÜNNHILDE the following night. The Met, upon calling Ms. Varnay's New York agent, were then informed of her situation in Texas. Max Rudolph called the Texas hospital and asked Weigert about Ms. Varnay's availability. During intermission of the Dallas concert, Ms. Varnay received the phone call from the Met, officially asking her to fly to New York immediately to replace Traubel the following evening. If Ms. Varnay didn't, it would be a recasting nightmare. Margaret Harshaw had been summoned and immediately started coaching with Stiedry the Götterdämmerung BRÜNNHILDE, a role she had never sung before, while Ms. Varnay had done 6 or so. On top of all this, Harshaw was in the middle of switching from mezzo to soprano, and she was actually cast to sing the third Norn and Waltraute. If Harshaw sang Brünnhilde, Herr te Glatz would be Waltraute. Since Glatz was actually scheduled as Flosshilde, Thelma Votipka was put on standby to take over for the third Norn. The cast included Seth Svanholm, Paul Schöffler, Regina Resnick, and Lucina Mara as a Rhine maiden. They all were on pins and needles except for one. Rusty the Black Horse kept his calm. Being a professional, she caught the 2 a.m. flight, the last available seat. She took a tranquilizer and tried to go to sleep. Due to engine trouble, she got stuck in Memphis for 10 hours and finally landed at LaGuardia Airport at 3:40 p.m., less than 4 hours before the performance. She received no greeting at the airport. If it was Johnson's regime, he certainly would have been there waiting for her. She rushed to the apartment, boiled a couple of eggs while ignoring the ringing phone, and dashed to the opera house. She entered her dressing room and immediately locked the door. Stiedry knocked and knocked, begging to talk with her, and she answered with a firm no. He left, mumbling something about prima donnas, not knowing what Ms. Varnay had been through. Bing did, however, thank her for stepping in on such short notice. Ms. Varnay, high on resentment, proceeded to sing a performance, according to her friends, of immense impact. At the end of the performance, there was a knock on her dressing room door. It was Edward Johnson. His first words were, "How's Hermann?" Her dresser and a makeup assistant were the only other ones that asked about her husband, a member of the Metropolitan artistic staff for 22 years. Weigert was transferred to a New York hospital and cautioned to slow down. Miss Varnay arranged for German-speaking nurses, and the wife of Herbert Janssen sat with Weigert while Miss Varnay was needed at the Opera House. During December of 1951 and into January of 1952, Astrid Varnay sang 5 Santuzzas, 4 at the Met and 1 in Cleveland. She shared the stage twice with Richard Tucker and twice with Kurt Baum. The 4th performance, though, on December 27th, was with Mario Del Monaco. One can just imagine what the sound was like coming from 2 singers who had such, quote, industrial-strength high notes held indecently long, unquote. Here, from her 1954 studio recording, is the solo Tu ridu mi tolse l'onore. The role of Alfio is sung by James Pease, and the performance was conducted by Wolfgang Sawallisch. Yes, it is in German, but that doesn't distract the listener. Indeed, her understanding of Italianate verismo is total, making one wish for more opportunities like this. Astrid Varnay also covered Zinka Milanov in other performances of Cavalleria Rusticana.
Well, Milanov stories, they abound, but what is more is Velich. Velich and Milanov, I don't think they saw eye to eye. Milanov was a bit jealous about certain soprano roles. She could consider them her own, but she was entitled to do it, to tell you the truth. She was so darn good in those roles, especially The Force of Destiny. There were times when I used to be awfully scared. I listened in on the radio, or I listened in the theater, in rehearsals, even with piano. She would be delightfully slovenly for chorus places, but when she sang her aria, she was magnificent. Mm-hmm. It was the funniest thing, but she once... I have it also in my book. I enjoy that story. I tried to get the sound of the orchestra in my own way to find out if I had to jump in, what do I hear on stage? And I was listening as if I were going to be Santuzza. And I was on the side, the right side, facing the audience, and the man who was there, Désiré Dufresne, said, go to the other side, here there's too much things going on. So I went to the other side, not realizing that that was the place where the soprano had to come out of her dressing room and go into the wings. In came Madame Milanov "Varnay, what are you doing there?" And I thought, dear Lord, help me. "I am learning, madame." "That is good." And she walked off with a presence of not a SANTUZZA, but a queen of heaven knows what. And she thought I was learning from her, which I did in one way. I copied. Yes. And so she came off stage and says, "You have to watch out, for there is one place there you could hurt yourself with one of these chairs. Be careful." That was an accolade that she accepted me.
Yes, yes, it was her stamp.
That was her stamp.
Mm-hmm. They said, "Madame Milanov, could you please tell us the story of Il Trovatore?" And she said, "How can I only sing one role?"
I like it.
The importance of the Italian language was always a factor in the singing of Astrid Varnay.
The Italian language has its great points for the resonance, and if one can mix the Italian technique with German, you have what we call a good Wagnerian sound without it being hooty. The French, to my mind, is wonderful for concert use, but even the French should not be nasal.
Astrid Varnay's second Strauss heroine for the Met was Elektra, which was broadcast on February 23, 1952, under the baton of Fritz Reiner. I mentioned to Madame Varnay that my favorite Varnay moment was when Elektra vehemently explodes at her mother, which begins with "Was bluten muss."
You like me in bad roles?
No.
Or let's say in destructive thoughts. That's one of those things which are very important to do. I didn't want to feel a thing, not to be overcome.
You mean you as...
I did technique, relied on technique and various places, selected places to show her hate. But you have to hold back for that whole thing, shall we say, to guide yourself in it. And it was so composed, one didn't have to do much about it. At least I didn't feel any problem. More difficult is the recognition with arrest. The moment and her singing afterwards. That's a great change there.
Calm and...
Well, it's really making a god out of him. Something has come true, I hardly believe. And that, of course, is positive and plus, whereas with the mother, it's destructive. The beauty of the Greek is that everyone is right and everyone is wrong. Clytemnestra had reason to be against her. And Elektra had reason to be against her mother, but she didn't realize what she was doing. And of course, she's against Chrysothemis too, being nothing but an egoistic person.
Yeah.
So in other words, everybody had a yes and a no.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fabulous. The Greeks have a word for it. It's really action and beautifully composed. I enjoyed singing Elektra. It made me feel good. At the end of it, I was not tired.
Really?
No. Physically, perhaps, but not mentally. I don't know.
During the
It
performance.
was well written for me. And later on, the Clytemnestra, of course, was absolutely it.
Absolutely.
And strong, strong characteristics.
Yes.